is a Fox News special report.
This is Fox News coverage of the president's trip to hurricane-ravaged Florida. I'm Bill Hemmer, live today in New York City on this Monday. The president and the first lady arriving a moment ago. They're about to see some scenes of devastation, that few of us see in our lifetimes. 19 people reported dead. At least one town suggests at least 35 others still missing. That death toll could go higher before it's all done. Michael, Category 4 hurricane, 155-mile-an-hour winds. The destructive storm surge just ripped homes from their foundation, and the extent of that damage runs for miles inland. Along with Heather Childers here in New York. And Heather, we have seen the president now visit two spots in the American Southeast that have been hit by Mother Nature that has changed a lot of lives for a long time. Right on the heels of Hurricane Florence that swept through these areas. You see the president shaking hands there, Governor Rick Scott there, as well as Congressman Matt Gaetz. You know, and as we were just discussing, he becomes the consoler in chief in moments like this. Good job. In the case of Rick Scott, the governor, he's been on the scene for all of these events as governor. He's got to be tired. And now he's running for Senate. Yeah. But what he said over the weekend about indescribable and unprecedented damage. They're talking about 1,700 search and rescue personnel have checked out 25,000 homes. And there still is so much more to do. So this is where the tour begins now for the first couple. We were showing the drone footage across the area and it being so expansive. And it's amazing the technology that we have today that we did not have in previous storms years ago, where we can see exactly what has happened to people. And then we also had a report earlier where one family actually used NOAA satellite systems, where they saw their grandparents. They were there at home within the expanse of the damage, and they had put out help in their yard. Turned out they were okay, so it was a happy ending. Yeah, so much of this is it's a repeated story in that you lose the power and then the evacuees leave and then they come back. But this is taken to a much greater degree so far here in Florida. Not only dealing without power and the foundations of homes that have just vanished, but there's no cell service. And as much as we've come to rely on technology and the internet, there's none of that right now. Right. And it is word of mouth for the people trying to figure out what is next for this stage of their lives. So we could get a moment here for the president to answer some questions and make a comment. So we're just going to hang on this image until we get further confirmation of that, Heather. Yeah, that's why there's still so many people missing or unaccounted for, because as you mentioned, you know, communications are down, power is out. The president tweeting out earlier that he would be making this trip today and specifically thanking all the first responders. Let's listen.
While we're here, we're going to be doing a pretty big tour, and then we're going to Georgia. I'm going to Georgia. Rick Scott, your governor, has done an incredible job, and all of your people have been amazing, working with FEMA, working with the first responders, and always law enforcement. The job they've done in Florida has been incredible, and likewise, I'm hearing in Georgia very good things, Rick. So I want to thank you. You're a great governor. You really have been. He steps up in the biggest emergencies, the biggest problems, and he gets it done. So, Rick Scott, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the president. We talked almost every day. Everything I've asked for, he's come through. Brock Longridge here runs FEMA. West Ball runs the State Emergency Management Team. Everything I've asked for from FEMA, they've done. We've got water out, we've got food out. We all together, we had search and rescue teams the night of the hurricane going into these communities to save lives. Our Coast Guard did missions at night saving lives. They saved a lot of people's lives. So everybody's working together, the National Guard, highway station, but I want to thank everybody for all this coordination to save lives and get people back to normal as quickly as we can. But I want to thank the president again. Every time I called, he comes through and done exactly what he said he was going to do.
I have to say, one of the most incredible things always is power. And we have thousands and thousands of electricians at the top level, but the electric companies have followed as the hurricane left. They followed right behind it. And they put on hundreds of thousands of homes that are already back. Now, the one problem is some homes don't exist anymore. I mean, they're literally wiped out.
It is a governor's first responsibility, especially when it comes to the state of Florida. You think about how much Governor Scott has been exposed to this, but the initial remarks are quite clear that he respects the job that FEMA, the federal government, and the president has done so far with their request to get more help.
And the president thanking, FEMA, first responders, and law enforcement, saying, feeding, water, power, those are the priorities right now. Looks
like Matt Gaetz there. He represents the district down, the Congressional District 1 in the Florida Panhandle, so we'll continue to track that. This is what they're dealing with in Mexico Beach. Another body was found on Saturday in the rubble, and there was a lot of rubble remaining behind. On Sunday, you still had at least 200,000 customers in Florida still in the dark over 11 different counties. That's such a wide area, and that's just in Florida, not to count Georgia to the north. 4,000 members of Florida's National Guard have been called up to deal with this storm. 500 were added again on Saturday. You had 2,000 law enforcement officials sent into the Panhandle. Looting is always an issue in the end, and you want to make sure for the folks who they obey the evacuation order to go ahead and leave their home behind.
And you hope that they did that.
And that they can come back, and it is still respected, and their property is respected as well.
I've been to this specific area, these beautiful white sand beaches. It's just heart-wrenching to take a look at this devastation right here, because that will impact them years and years and years to come economically. I mean, tourism, that's what they count on.
Yeah. Mark Thiessen is still with us. Mark, you've been listening to this, and you think about the first job of a governor is to take care of his people. Rick Scott's in the middle of a campaign as well, and the president now seeing this in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina prior. Your point is well taken. You have to be a consoler-in-chief, not just a commander-in-chief.
Well, he's got to be both. I mean, you're absolutely right. He has to be consoler-in-chief. He's got to go to these families, devastated families. I'm sure he's going to be meeting with people in shelters today and talking to them and comforting them. And these are moments when and it's very hard because there's a really consequential election just weeks away. But these are moments when we have to put aside politics and come together as a country. And that's what Donald Trump's job is to do today, is to bring the country together, to let these people know the country stands behind you, that we're 100% with you. We're doing everything that we can to get you the resources you need to rebuild your lives. So he has to be the consoler-in-chief, but also the chief executive, the commander-in-chief, who's marshaling the National Guard and all the other assets we have to deliver real assistance to these people who are so devastated. So this is a chance for him to really be the president of all Americans, as he promised he would be.
Mark, thank you. Stand by, okay? Mark Thiessen watching this in Washington, D.C.
Will do.
To our viewers across the country, this has been coverage on the Fox News channel and this Fox station of the aftermath of Hurricane Michael. The president and the first lady arriving in Florida. They will tour throughout the next several hours. Later, they'll end up in the state of Georgia as well. So stay tuned to this channel and the Fox News channel for continuing coverage on this story. Until then, I'm Bill Hemmer from New York on this Monday late morning. And now,
this has been the Fox News Special Report.